Almost a decade ago, when John Swinney was Education Secretary, he said the defining mission of the government was education. On Tuesday, it was revealed that under the SNP, the attainment in Scotland's schools is declining across the board, and shamefully, outcomes for young working-class Scots are getting worse compared to those from wealthier backgrounds. And today, the Auditor-General said the SNP had failed to properly provide the support for those pupils with additional support needs. He said the Scottish Government has failed to plan effectively, and went on to say it is unclear whether all Scotland's children's right to have an education that fully develops their personality, talents and abilities is being met. Isn't it the case that Scottish education, once the envy of the world, is going in the wrong direction under the SNP?
First Minister.
I'm always prepared to listen to reports from the Auditor-General and to consider the implications for government and for local authorities, because local authorities are responsible for the delivery of education in our country. So we will take those issues seriously and respond accordingly. I think it's important that I reassure members of the public about the progress that's been made on closing the attainment gap. The overall poverty-related attainment gap has reduced by 60% since 2009-10 under this government. The poverty-related attainment gap between young people from the most and least deprived areas meeting standards in literacy is at a record low in primary schools at 20.1%, and the attainment gap has reached record lows between secondary pupils achieving third level in both literacy and numeracy at 12.7 and 12 percentage points respectively. And in relation to the additional support for learning, in which I accept the absolute necessity to make sure that good outcomes are achieved for young people, the attainment gap between school pupils with additional support needs and those without has reduced by almost half since 2009-10, 45.3% to 23.1%. Now, I accept there is more that needs to be done, but important and substantial progress has been made on closing the attainment gap, and that is good for children and young people in our country.
Sarwar.
John Swinney was the person tasked with improving Scottish education, and he has failed. Just last year, 42.6% of pupils left school without a single higher or equivalent. That's almost 24,000 young people. 16.5% left school without a single National 5 or equivalent. That's over 9,000 children. And 1,300 young people left school without the most basic of qualifications. The future of every single one of these children should matter. And, Presiding Officer, let's not forget it was John Swinney who downgraded the exam results of working-class kids during the pandemic. And now, as First Minister, he is overseeing the betrayal of young Scots with the attainment gap widening. Why is this SNP government letting down a generation of young Scots?
First Minister.
I'm afraid Mr Sarwar is going to have to learn to adapt his questions based on the information that I put on the record. So let me repeat the information that I put on the record, Presiding Officer.
Members.
The overall poverty-related attainment gap has reduced by 60% since 2009-10 in the face of unremitting austerity from the United Kingdom Government. So progress is being made. There is an improvement in the outcomes for young people over that period. Mr Sarwar talked about the outcomes for young people leaving school. The percentage of young people in a positive destination 3 months after leaving school is 95.7%, the second highest since records began. So I'm afraid Mr Sarwar has to... I accept there is work to be done, but Mr Sarwar has to accept the evidence I'm putting on the record that as a consequence of the investment that this government has made, we are making progress in improving outcomes for young people and in closing the attainment gap, and Parliament should support that endeavour.
Sarwar.
This is a government that includes a zero-hour contract or voluntary work as a positive destination for young Scots. And I literally quoted 42.6% of pupils left school last year without a single higher or equivalent. And it's interesting the First Minister didn't respond to that statistic. Almost 45% of young people leaving without a single higher in our schools. And teachers have been warning about this for years. And education expert Professor Lindsay Patterson said this morning, the Scottish Government has never had a coherent strategy for dealing with the educational effects of poverty. John Swinney's report card is woeful. Attainment down across the board, more pupils leaving school with no qualifications, fewer additional support need teachers. Our classrooms should be places for learning, growing and flourishing. And the promise I make is that, as First Minister, I will make sure every young Scot can reach their potential. That's why we will agree new Scottish industry standards so that young people can see the future opportunities that their school subjects and qualifications will give them. That's the new direction we offer. So after nearly 2 decades, the SNP have nobody else to blame for the damage done to Scotland's education system. So isn't it clear that the SNP's defining mission is now their defining failure?
First Minister.
Well, Mr Sarwar might have conjured up that script before he actually asked me any questions, but I have refuted the detail that he's put on the record because we are making progress in closing the attainment gap, as I recounted to Mr Sarwar a second ago. The attainment gap under this government has reduced by 60% since 2009-10. And I am absolutely determined to improve outcomes for young people. Why are we doing that? Well, we're doing that because this was the government that put the investment in to give children the best start in life by the expansion of early learning and childcare. This government has put the money in place to support the improvement in the lives of young people living in poverty by the Scottish Child Payment. Originally set at £5, now £26.70 to every eligible child, helping to lift hundreds of thousands of children out of poverty. It's why in Scotland we are the only part of the United Kingdom where it is projected that poverty amongst children will fall when it will rise in every other part of the United Kingdom under the stewardship in England and in Wales of the Labour Party. So I would say to people in Scotland, look at what the SNP has delivered to improve the opportunities and the life chances of the children and young people of Scotland. And look at what a Labour government does, that goes into office promising to reduce fuel bills for individuals in our country, and they go up. That's what Labour deliver. They deliver broken promises to the people of Scotland, and Mr Sarwar will be no different.
Question number 3, Alex Cole-Hamilton.